Welcome back to Masters of Data, everyone. I'm Adam White. I have with me Zoe Hawkins and Melissa Beck. Melissa, you are a new face on the podcast. Do you mind just introducing yourself real quick?
I've been waiting to be invited on this podcast for a while, guys. So I'm just like, yes, I made
I've been
it.
Yes.
saving you.
Yes, I'm Melissa Beck. I'm the VP of Corporate Marketing here at Sumo Logic. I've been running comms and analyst relations and thought leadership for, gosh, a decade at the company. So a lot of experience in seeing sort of Sumo's growth along those sort of market trends and as technologies evolve. So it's been a fun ride.
That's super awesome. Well, good to have you on. Thanks for your time today, for sure. We're here today to talk about analyst reports, which I know we're all super passionate about, both in in the creation or in the answering of these reports when they come out, but also in just kind of analyzing the market. It's just interesting to see how these kind of third parties perceive markets, and they get to talk to both customers and product company. So it's a fun topic. I know, timely. The Magic Quadrant just came out. The Critical Capabilities report just came out. Melissa, if you don't mind, like, what's the difference between those two things? How should we kind of think about Magic Quadrant, critical capabilities? What's a good lens to look at those through?
Yes, I think at a base level, as you think about the Magic Quadrant, these are really the folks who are looking at that are the decision buyers, right? Those are the people that are, who should I evaluate? I'm looking for a solution. What are the companies I should evaluate? What's their ability, to execute and what's their completeness of vision within a certain market to help me make that decision, right? So that's a very specific, I think persona that's going in and looking at them, even though there's all kinds of people that look at MQs, right? I mean, it's not certainly specifically for them, but I think they're the primary ones who are sort of using that to help them make those decisions. Conversely, I think critical capabilities, it's really so critical capabilities are based on vendors talk to all these, or sorry, analysts talk to all these vendors all year long. They start to understand common use cases within each of these vendors, and they sort of come to this like sort of list of like here's sort of the top common use cases within a technology market, in this case sim, right? And so what they do is they get those use cases, then they decide, well, what are the capabilities that you really need to have in those use cases, and then they assign weightings to them. So and then they evaluate companies based on each of those capabilities. So much more of a technology play, I think, much more geared towards the practitioner, which is why sometimes in some of these reports you see like some companies up here and then some down here, but then they're high up in the critical capabilities for other reasons, right? So
Yeah.
it's just two different lenses and how you're looking at a company and evaluating solutions.
It's so funny that, we talk about this. So I always joke that I'm married to my developer persona in residence. So, that's all he's here for, really, that and cooking
Right.
me fillet steak all the time. And one of the things that I always laugh at is, when he at his company, they purchased a solution and it was like, ugh, the field CTO picked it, and he just looked at the, magic quadrant, went that one, and that was kind of it. And then he got stuck with whatever tool the CTO had picked out at the time, and he had to make it work and all of that. So it's definitely something interesting. Also, I just want to put out my analyst safe harbor. These are all just opinions, just our thoughts and
Yeah.
feelings.
We love them all. We
We
love
love
all.
all of you equally. Please don't at me. Please don't get me in trouble. But yeah, I mean, I think there is that piece of like, we think about who's making a buying decision, but who actually has to work with the tool. And hopefully those people all talk to each other. But that perspective is going to be quite different.
To your point, Zoe, I mean, is that where like these documents being kind of companion documents with one another, I was thinking when you were saying that, and no shade to Cisco, amazing company, but the old adage, like no one ever got fired for buying Cisco, it's kind of like a very similar concept in a Magic Quadrant where it's like, all right, top right company, I'll just buy them, but is there from a companion document perspective, like room to look at the critical capabilities and say, okay, they're great, obviously, but like how does some of these things stack from like a more practitioner kind of like rubber meets the road, day job, jobs to be done, however you want to look at it, like perspective. to use that as like a companion from a buying decision perspective.
That's how I'm thinking about it because like, if these analysts have to talk to everybody, and Melissa will probably ask you more about like how do they talk to everybody? But like, if these analysts have to analyze all of this and hold everybody to some kind of standard, right? They have to come up with a grade and then hold everybody to that grading rubric, whatever that looks like. You know,
Yeah,
what that means for a fintech company, what that means for a healthcare company, what that means for like a gaming or media or, publishing company, it's going to be really different in terms of like what kind of threats are they facing? What are those like opportunities for abuse versus use that, would come in that these analysts are evaluating. And so a standard quadrant, a standard thing might be useful as like a big picture view of like, okay, if you are generic company 1, 2, 3, you might find value from these solutions. But let's dig in. Like, is threat detection, investigation, and response your main use case? Then you probably want to look at the critical capabilities report to see like, okay, this is the use case that I actually care about. Who are the top contenders on that list compared
yeah,
to maybe that might not match what you see in the Magic Quadrant.
I
yeah,
kind of liken it to, so I'm obsessed with travel things,
Ooh.
like, like travel, like what kind of gadgets do I need to travel with, like on planes and stuff like that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
constantly like looking at these things. And I liken it to, I think it's Travel and Leisure that always does this list of like the best like air pillows, or the best, cords that you need to have on the plane to charge your stuff or whatever it is. And they always have this list of like 10, right? So I get a sense of who those companies are, right? Or what the vendors are. And then they do this double dip where it's like best for and not great for, right? Like if you are a person that is a road warrior, this is great for you. If you're a leisure traveler, you don't need it. It's too much for you, right? So I think of it almost kind of like that with MQ. It's like, oh, here's all the companies that do a really great job at this thing that I'm looking at that I want to buy. But oh, here's my needs. And oh, that really doesn't fit my need. Or yes, that does fit my need.
I love
yeah.
it. So for the
American
weekend
people.
warriors, I
Exactly.
love it. I love it. That's how I'm going to describe every solution from now on. It's like, you're really a weekend warrior of solutions.
I also realized that I needed to talk to you now for some travel suggestions, Melissa.
Oh, I got them all. I'm telling you, tried everything. I've actually been drawn into many, and I'm like, oh, that really didn't work.
Oh no.
So one of the things I was thinking as you were introducing yourself even is like, I mean, you've been through, I'm sure, a number of count analyst cycles now. What do those processes typically look like throughout the year? Like who do they engage? I mean, presumably there's, product management and maybe some engineering from like, okay, what are your roadmap plans? Who are you now as a company, but who are you becoming? Like how do some of those kind of conversations play out? And I don't know if you see any kind of difference too in the way that those manifest in something like the Magic Quadrant versus the critical capabilities, like those.
I think it's yes and no. So it's interesting. For example, I'll take Sumo for example. We were, I've been here 10 years, and probably year 5 we decided we wanted to get into an MQ, right?
Yeah,
That's not an easy thing to just say, hey, let's go apply for the MQ. You have to, there's so many qualifications, right? You've got to have the right revenue number, and you've got to have, like all the things that kind of even put you in the bucket for that. So it requires and I'm not saying this is like the strategy to get into an MQ, but in general, when you're building an analyst relations program, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time. It's a lot of time with a lot of people, different people across the company, because you want to hear a vision and strategy from the CEO. You want to hear a product vision and strategy from your product leaders. You want to see how it works, and you want to talk to customers. You want to hear how, like you want to hear it from other people. So I feel like it's a lot of briefings and inquiries. You just kind of jam on it. And it's really all about education. They're getting educated and close to your business, and you're getting educated on things that they care about and things that they might get hung up on. Like something we love is something they just don't care about in the industry. You just kind of get to know each other that way.
yeah,
So I think there's a couple things. With that being said, it really I have found over the course of my time doing analyst relations is the best relationships are ones that are two-way streets, meaning that we don't just come to you when we've launched a new product and we've got something to tell you and we want you to know about this because we want you to write about us. It's really like, hey, we're trying to sort out this pricing model, right? And we've gone through a couple of iterations. We're getting some good feedback from customers. I'm just curious. I'd love to run it by you. And are you seeing other vendors or other sort of companies in the world sort of taking this sort of approach, right? When you start to bring them in as advisors, they love to talk about all the people, like all the things that they know. They're like doctors. They're like, yes, let me talk to you about all the things. I love it. So that those are the best relationships because it's totally two-way. You're getting something from them, they're getting something from you. Does that impact you down the road in getting into some of these reports? I No, but I will say when you put that evaluation in and that analyst that you talk to all the time, they know, at a tertiary level, your stuff. And so they can interpret your evaluation a little bit differently than somebody they don't know at all. And they just have to kind of read what they're submitting, right? It's all kind of sort of static that way. So I don't know if that exactly answered your question, but I
Well,
think
I mean, talking about like
Yeah.
what's written, I know in previous like companies that I've either been at or heard about, people kind of complain like, oh my gosh, I'm buried under like a Gartner survey. Like, how big a questionnaire are we? Like, is it literally like 1,000 questions, 100 questions? Like, what does that look like? And, I've heard about people having to give demos. Like, both people in this on the screen with me, like, I'm just thinking, for people who are watching, who are listening, like sometimes it feels like analysts just kind of like, okay, you're a six. Like, tell us a little bit more about like the types of questions that different analysts might ask for, or like the types of demos even that they ask to see.
Adam, I'll let you weigh in on demos because you kind of know what they're looking for. But yes, demos to everything. And sometimes they want them very scripted because they want to get to the things that they want to evaluate, right? And I'm not just saying this about specific analyst companies, but analysts in general. Just depends on the way they run their report. But um, I think that these questionnaires seem to get bigger and bigger every year, in my opinion. I just feel like, oh my God, because criteria changes, weighting changes, technology shifts happen, right? Like we were talking, earlier today about AI and how that's kind of impacting some of these evaluations because it's now become a part of some of these market trends. So I feel like they get bigger and bigger. When you start to do them every year, though, you kind of get the rhythm. You're like, okay, I know I'm going to get asked this, this, and this. We know we've got this, and this. We can kind of just do an update on it, right? Like, where are we with it? But it's things across the entire company. And that's something that I think some people underestimate. I think they think it's all going to be product focused, and it's a huge chunk of it. But they're looking at like your partner ecosystem. They're looking at growth in certain regions. Like, what's your regional go-to marketing strategy in APAC or in Europe or whatever. So it goes across the company. There's a lot of people that weigh in on these evaluations besides marketing, product marketing, right? It's like it's a serious, like it's a Herculean effort, I think.
Even your head count and where your people are, and yeah, I mean it's extremely comprehensive. I mean, to your point, Melissa, on the demo front, it's I've seen it both ways, where not a lot of direction is given, and it's just kind of you end up doing this, 2 hour harbor tour kind of like everything that's possible. And then some of them are like very specific of we want to see this and we want to see this. And so it becomes a more kind of orchestrated affair. So
What do you think's
yeah,
harder, Adam? Because I have an opinion, but what do you think's harder? Which
I
way?
think it's harder when they don't provide a lot of guidance, actually. Like it's pretty none of them are easy because they require a lot of time to just kind of make sure. Because what's different, and this was kind of a comment I was going to make, is that these exercises don't exactly mirror our interactions that we have with prospects. Like we're not going into a prospect conversation and doing a 2 hour,
Please
meandering
no, please
demo.
never sign me up for
No
a
one
2 hour
should do that,
demo.
right?
Yeah.
So it should always have, a discovery component where it's like, okay, what pain are you experiencing that you believe you're having a conversation with us for a reason? What pain do you believe we can alleviate? And we say, we can absolutely alleviate that pain. Here's how we do it with, XYZ customer. We do it all the time. Let us show you. Those demos that are more kind of scripted or prescriptive are easier, and I think probably are better in general.
Yeah, I think I would totally agree with you. I didn't want to lead the witness, but I totally agree with you on that because I will say when you get that open-ended, it feels like a little bit of a gimme. You're like, yes, this is awesome. But then when you really sit down to do it, that demo has to mirror the story that you're trying to tell in the evaluation. And
Yeah,
that could go 5,000 different ways, right? I mean, it's just hard to say. It's much easier to say, I want to see this, 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 and this. Great. Got it.
yeah.
We will show them,
Yeah.
you know.
Along those lines, Melissa, you were talking about kind of that two-way relationship with analysts. I think, the most important element of that, like, why are we all here? Why do we work for a software company? It's to drive customer value. Like, we want our customers to receive immense value from what we're creating. And so to the degree that you can have a relationship with analysts where it's like, what are you seeing in the market? What pain points might we not be cognizant of or addressing appropriately? And how can we kind of maybe reshape some part of our roadmap to help address those things. I am molecularly opposed to analysts driving roadmaps too much because I think a company needs to have its own sense of its existential being and like why it exists and the market that it's serving and the customers that it's helping. But at the same time, I think it would be a shame not to use those analyst relationships to say, what are we missing? How can we highlight this more, better, faster, in the service of customer value?
100%. Look, you spend a lot of money for analyst, analyst relationships, and that covers strategy, it covers counsel, it covers these reports, right? It's, that you spend a lot of money for access to all of this stuff. And so I totally agree with that. I think it's all in how you position the ask and the inquiry. A lot of times, especially in the early days of sumo, when we were trying to break into, certain markets, right? We had to prove why we belonged to be there in the first place, right? And then it was like, okay, here's what we're offering, here's what we're thinking. What do you think about it? And we never changed our roadmap. I've never been in a position where I've seen a company change their roadmap because an analyst said
Yeah,
that sucks. But oftentimes it's like the way you talk about it, no one's going to understand it. This is really good technology where you're going, but the way you describe it to me, if you're talking to customers like that, they don't get that. That's not how they speak. They don't use those words. Those are your words, right? And so that's the stuff that I think becomes really valuable in those conversations is like, oh, okay, like we're so focused on this. We're like, we didn't even think how we were talking about it. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, one of the phrases in these reports and all of that that I find so intriguing, word person. I love lingo and phrasing of stuff, but the idea of completeness of vision is super interesting to me on this kind of note because I think there is that piece where you say like, this is our vision, this is what we're planning, this is where we're going. And Adam, like you were saying, the analyst might be like, I don't think that's the place to go, but it's like, but you thought this through, like you have a full idea. We might disagree with your idea, but are you still presenting it in a way that shows that you have that vision setting? And I think there's a component there as well that's super interesting and around like what does it mean to have completeness of vision even is super intriguing.
I totally agree with you, Zoe, and that's where it starts to become subjective. Despite the evaluation criteria, despite the weightings, despite all the, there it is very formulaic and an algorithm. There's still an element of this is what I think and feel. And I've learned recently, I've had a couple of discussions with analysts where you could have like the best product in these categories, but depending on market shifts or where other companies have shifted because of things that have been going on in their world, it puts you in a different position. It's just it's not that you aren't good or that you didn't do something right or that you're not growing or any of that stuff. So that stuff starts to come into play, but I still think that's subjective, right? I mean, market shifts, like we saw the sim market have a huge tectonic shift last year, right? And that
Yeah.
changed a lot of people's worlds. And so are we still feeling some of that? Did that change how some companies showed up on some of these reports? Maybe, but I still think that's subjective in terms of why they showed up that way, right? That's
Well, and I mean that's kind of a thing. Like I remember last year, was last year. Yeah, the MQ came out and then all these announcements came out and it was almost like,
Like the
does
week
this,
after.
yeah, like, does this still even matter? Like, why are we even talking about a report that names companies that have now merged into each other or acquired each other or whatever it looks like? And so I wonder as well in the realm of, does any of this still matter? And question, Adam and I always joke on this show. We're like, in this year of AI, like, how does AI change all of this? If I can go into, if I can open up a window with Claude or ChatGPT or whoever my AI of choice is for that given week, and say like, hey, I'm dealing with this and this and this problem. I'm grappling with these and these solutions. This is my current tech stack. I'm thinking about getting a sim. What would who should I talk to? Who should I look at? And the AI will spit out a list for me, like that's, custom to me and what I'm talking about and what I'm asking. How does that compare or how does that relate to what analysts are doing? Talk me through kind of like how AI is maybe
I think
changing the
there
world for analysts.
I feel like there's two ways. The first, and this is just kind of going off of what you're saying in terms of I want to find something, I'm going to put in my, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and it's going to come up. Look, we all know that AI is scraping everything. Analyst reports are one of them, right? But it's not the only thing. They're scraping press releases, they're scraping G2 reviews, they're scraping all kinds of things to get to those, sort of recommendations up there. So I would say, well, analyst reports maybe even like 5 years ago were probably the number one thing for buyer decision making. It's one of many now, right? It's not that it's not as valuable anymore, but there's other things that are getting risen to the top through AI that people are looking at, and it's good enough for them, right? They don't need
Mm-hmm.
kind of dig into the weeds and get into all that if they don't want to. So I think that's one way. I think it's definitely changing. I think an interesting thing that I'm seeing is happening, and I'm interested to see how it plays out. A lot of analyst firms are one adding AI into their websites. So Gartner just announced a new tool last week. Forrester has had one for a while. It really just helps people get to the reports quicker, right? It's a better sort of search engine, if you will, from my experience at least in some of those things. But some analysts are also using AI to help shorten the evaluation period for vendors because vendors, these are super time consuming. Sometimes they're back to back to back, depending on the timing, right? Of all these different analyst firms. Sometimes we're doing three at a time and it's just bone crushing. And so some are trying to sort of ease that experience and make it easier for vendors to want to participate by using AI to kind of do a first blush for them. So I'm finding it all kinds of different ways, and I don't know how it's going to shake out, but it's interesting. It's interesting how some analyst firms are kind of using it for certain things and some for others.
Yeah. Yeah, as we kind of move into an agentic AI era, I just have this image of like all of these analysts having their own like agents that you can just install in your system and it will go and like grab everything it needs. I don't know. Creeps me out, but also kind of cool to be like, don't go through a bone crushing process. You could just let our agent crawl all of your internal and external information and
It
find what we're
seems
looking
like a good
for.
idea. I mean, I don't, like I said, we went through a process recently. I don't know if it was harder or easier, right? Because first you got to kind of review what they put, then you got to figure out where they got it from. Is that updated? Is it not? And then if you have to fix it, you got to read. It's like actually like I felt like it was a double process in this case, but it can always get better. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
It feels like that process in particular feels like a little bit more work on the vendor just to kind of be like, all right, where did this even come from?
Yes.
We probably can present a more pristine image of ourselves if we're the ones just kind of answering blank questions, but maybe that's part of the exercise as well too. I know for some things it's like, where did you find this on our website? It's like
I
the
can't
deep
even find
dark
this link
caverns
that
of
you
them.
gave me. I don't
Yeah.
know how I found it. I
Yeah.
did go through that. I was like, where does this link ever come from? But I think like anything else, look, it's experimentation. Everyone's experimenting with AI in different ways and different in all across industries. And this is interesting how it's showing up in analyst relations, I think. And then on top of it, they're evaluating AI capabilities within these markets. So there's that whole element.
So meta.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I mean, I even think about it as well, like all of these new solutions that have popped up in the last 6 months to a year. Like, I thought I had a handle on the competitor landscape. And then in the last year or so, like anyone who could vibe code a product was just like, look, I made a thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, there's like 12 of you suddenly.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm curious as well how that plays into these evaluations also of, obviously there's always newcomers, there's new emerging technologies and things like that, but just kind of with AI, the scale of people who must be trying to be like Sumo Logic 5 years ago, being like, hi, I would like to join your reporting system. What do I need to do? Must be just monumental.
Well, and think about, like I said at the beginning, right? Like the best part about the best analyst relationships are two-way streets. Well, if AI can help analysts out with that, where they don't need to talk to us anymore, they really mean. I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it makes me a little nervous. Obviously, this is my own job security, but that's kind of nerve wracking, right? It's like you're getting context, but is it the right context?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And then more and more players can jump in the mix. It's kind of like all these companies can just kind of jump on board and be like, hi, I would like to be in your report, and you see how it goes, and the AI can evaluate it. It's wild.
This like disruptor noise, but
Yeah.
I mean, I guess to your point, a little bit, Melissa, like I guess part of the value of these analyst reports is like most companies, I guess enterprise companies in particular, aren't exactly looking for a garage band solution, and the entry criteria to something like a Magic Quadrant is like revenue thresholds and customers. And oh, by the way, having to talk to customers who are actually using and
Yeah.
getting value from. And so I guess, maybe like circling back, kind of landing the plane a little bit on like, some of the value that these actually provide is like that core or rather baseline vetting process of a company and its value. And like, yeah, there are disruptors out there who are doing interesting things potentially on the fringe or from, for some very kind of niche aspect of the market. But like, as you're looking at who can really provide you significant value, this is your list. And then critical capabilities goes into like, okay, if there are aspects where you're looking to, make sure that value is delivered particularly in this area or to what degree, like that's a good resource for those people who are kind of trying to dig in. Like if Yuba is really important to you or, whatever the case may be, right? It's like what's the score here? How do
I
we
think that's the magic of the magic quadrant, if you will, right? It's kind of the 1-2 punch of the magic quadrant plus critical capabilities
yeah.
perspective, right? And I, we've all bought technology of very, I mean, Zoe, we talk about this all the time. There's 100 things we could go buy out there for things that we want to solve. And who has time to like figure all that out? Like, get me a short list, and then
Yeah.
I'll figure it out from there, right? And if you can make it even easier for me to figure it out from there, great. So, I think it's interesting times that we're all in on all this stuff. And but I still think that people want to hear validation from third parties no matter what it is, whether it's an analyst firm, it's G2, it's Gartner Peer Insights, whatever it is, right? A third party validation feels like, okay, it's not just the vendor kind of talking at me all the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, 10 years in, you're being kept on your toes, Melissa. That's as good as you can hope
I'm
for,
always
right?
learning. I'm always learning. We'll see.
Yeah.
Love it.
This has been a really fun conversation. Thank you for joining us, Melissa, for your expertise and for your time today. Really appreciate it. Thank you as always. Thank you as always, Zoe. And thank you to our listening audience. If you haven't subscribed, please do, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye.